The redundancy principle. The UESC Fortitude hung in the darkness of deep space, its angular hull reflecting the distant starlight as it maintained position at the edge of the Cygnus expanse. Captain Maya Rice stood on the bridge, hands clasped behind her back as she studied the tactical display. The patrol was supposed to be routine, monitoring the border of human-controlled space for any signs of pirate activity or unauthorized mining operations. "Status report," she requested, her voice calm but authoritative. Lieutenant Commander Jackson looked up from his console. "All systems nominal, Captain. Long-range sensors are picking up some unusual energy signatures from the Talaris Nebula, but nothing conclusive yet." Reyes nodded. At 42, she was relatively young for a captain of a Defender-class cruiser, but her reputation for methodical thinking and unorthodox tactical decisions had earned her this command. The Fortitude wasn't the newest ship in the fleet, commissioned 15 years earlier, but Reyes preferred it that way. Newer vessels relied too heavily on integrated quantum systems, while the Fortitude maintained separate, redundant systems for critical functions. "Keep monitoring those signatures. I want a full spectral analysis," she ordered, a slight frown crossing her face. Something about the readings bothered her. Before Jackson could respond, the tactical alert blared across the bridge. Senior Tactical Officer Wei's voice cut through the sudden tension. "Captain, multiple ships emerging from FTL at Mark 223.47. The main view screen shifted to show 5 sleek, almost organic-looking vessels materializing against the backdrop of stars. Their hulls gleamed with an iridescent sheen that seemed to shift and pulse. "Valkyrie," Reyes breathed, her blood running cold. Humanity had encountered the highly advanced alien species only twice before, both times ending in devastating losses for the human ships involved. The Valkyrie possessed technology at least a century beyond Earth's best efforts. Their neural networked ships capable of processing tactical information and responding with perfect efficiency. Red alert. Battle stations. Reyes snapped into action. Weapons hot. Shields at maximum. Communications. Send priority Alpha alert to Fleet Command. The bridge erupted into controlled chaos as officers rushed to their stations. The Fortitude's older systems might be less integrated than the newer vessels, but Reyes had drilled her crew relentlessly on rapid response protocols. "Captain, they're scanning us," Wei reported. "Energy signatures suggest their weapons are powering up." Reyes made a quick calculation. The Fortitude couldn't outrun the Valkyrie ships, and reinforcements were hours away at best. They would have to fight. Tactical, target the lead vessel. Full spread of Hydra missiles followed by rail gun bursts. Let's give them something to think about. Reyes moved to the command chair, strapping herself in as the ship's alert klaxons continued to sound. The Fortitude shuddered as it launched its first salvo. On the tactical display, the bright points of the missiles streaked toward the alien vessels. For a moment, Reyes allowed herself a flicker of hope. Then the lead Valkyrie ship emitted a pulse of coherent energy that swept across space. The missiles detonated prematurely, their warheads neutralized by the alien countermeasures. "They've deployed some kind of energy field," Wei reported, his voice tight. "Our missiles can't get through." Before Reyes could issue new orders, the Valkyrie returned fire. Beams of intense energy lanced out from 3 of the alien ships, striking the Fortitude's shields with devastating precision. Shield strength down to 64%. Jackson called out, "They're targeting our power distribution nodes specifically." Another hit rocked the ship, sending sparks showering from an auxiliary console. "Primary shield generators failing." Wei shouted over the noise of damage control alarms. "Rerouting power." Reyes gripped the arms of her command chair. This was exactly what she had feared. The Valkyrie weren't just attacking the ship. They were attacking its systems with surgical precision, probably using advanced analytics to identify critical nodes. "Switch to secondary shield generators," she ordered, "and activate distributed power management." The Fortitude's design included multiple shield generators operating on different frequencies, a redundancy that many newer ships had eliminated in favor of more powerful, centralized systems. The tactical display flickered, then stabilized. Secondary shields holding at 87%, Captain Way reported with a hint of relief. They seem confused by our power distribution. A small smile crossed Reyes's face. The Valkyrie's perfect efficiency might actually be a weakness. They expected logical, optimized systems, not the seemingly inefficient redundancies that human military engineers had insisted on building into their vessels. Engineering, initiate Protocol Hydra, Reyes commanded through the ship's comm system. Protocol Hydra, came the response from Chief Engineer Rodriguez. The lights on the bridge dimmed momentarily as the ship's power systems reconfigured. The Valkyrie ships adjusted their formation, concentrating their fire on what they must have calculated as the Fortitude's primary reactor. A devastating barrage struck the human vessel, causing it to lurch violently. Direct hit to reactor shielding, Jackson reported, his face illuminated by the red emergency lighting. Primary reactor automatically shutting down. But instead of the expected power loss, the Fortitude's systems continued to function, now drawing energy from 3 smaller, auxiliary reactors located in armored compartments throughout the ship. Now we counter, Reyes said firmly. Tactical. Initiate firing pattern Delta 6. Use manual targeting overrides. We looked up in surprise. Manual targeting, Captain. That will reduce our accuracy by. It will also bypass the neural interference they're trying to use on our targeting computers. Reyes cut in. Do it. As the Valkyrie ships moved in for what they clearly thought would be a finishing blow, the Fortitude unleashed a barrage of weapons fire that seemed almost primitive compared to the aliens' precision attacks. Rail gun rounds, point defense lasers, and a scattering of mines deployed in seemingly random patterns. The Valkyrie ships, expecting a logical response pattern, were caught unprepared. 2 of the smaller vessels took direct hits, their perfect formations disrupted as they attempted to process the chaotic attack pattern. They're recalibrating, Jackson observed, studying his readings. Their ships operate like a hive mind. They are trying to develop a counter-strategy in real time, which gives us about 30 seconds, Reyes calculated. Chief Rodriguez, initiate the electromagnetic pulse. All crew, secure for EMP. Throughout the Fortitude, delicate electronics were automatically shielded as the ship prepared to deploy one of its oldest and most basic weapons, a massive electromagnetic pulse designed to disrupt enemy systems. The pulse erupted from the human vessel, spreading outward in an invisible wave. The Valkyrie ships, with their highly integrated neural networks, visibly faltered. Their formation broke apart as communication between vessels was temporarily disrupted. Direct hit on the smallest vessel, Way reported with growing excitement. Their shields are down. Finish it, Reyes ordered coldly. Full conventional weapons barrage on that target. The disabled Valkyrie ship, unable to coordinate with its companions, took the full force of the Fortitude's remaining missile complement. Its beautiful hull cracked, then shattered, debris spinning away into the void. The remaining Valkyrie vessels, recovering from the EMP, began to pull back, their perfect formation now ragged and uncoordinated. They're retreating, Jackson confirmed, unable to keep the surprise from his voice. Reyes didn't share his relief. They're regrouping. This was just a scout force. She tapped her console, bringing up a damage report. Status of our FTL drive. Operational, but the containment field is unstable, Rodriguez reported from engineering. We can make 1 jump, maybe 2 before we need significant repairs. Reyes considered their options. The Fortitude had survived this encounter, but only because the Valkyrie hadn't expected their redundant systems and unconventional tactics. Next time, the aliens would be prepared. Set course for the Proxima defensive perimeter, she decided. Maximum sustainable speed, and prepare a complete tactical analysis of this engagement for transmission to Fleet Command. They need to know what we've learned. As the damaged but functional Fortitude limped away from the battlefield, Reyes stared at the tactical display showing the retreating Valkyrie ships. They had won this skirmish not through superior technology or firepower, but through the seemingly inefficient redundancies built into human vessels, backup systems, distributed power management, and the ability to function even when primary systems failed. It was a lesson learned through centuries of warfare, starting in Earth's oceans and continuing into space. No matter how advanced your technology, the universe found ways to make things fail. And when systems failed in the cold vacuum of space, there were no second chances, unless you had built those second chances into your ship from the beginning. "Prepare repair teams," Reyes ordered as she unstrapped from her command chair. "And I want a full inventory of our remaining weapons and defensive capabilities. The Valkyrie will be back, and next time, they'll bring friends." The adaptive response. 3 days after the encounter with the Valkyrie scout force, the UESC Fortitude maintained position behind the third moon of Proxima Centauri, its battle-scarred hull hidden from casual detection. Inside the ship, repair crews worked around the clock to restore damaged systems, while Captain Reyes and her senior staff gathered in the tactical planning room. "The good news is that we've restored primary power to all essential systems," Chief Engineer Rodriguez reported, his uniform stained with coolant and his eyes red from lack of sleep. "The bad news is that our main reactor is still operating at 67% efficiency, and the starboard shield generators need complete replacement." Reyes nodded, studying the holographic display of their ship. Damage indicators glowed in various shades of yellow and red across the Fortitude's schematic. "What about weapons?" she asked. Lieutenant Commander Wee grimaced. "We've got 40% of our missile capacity remaining, and the rail guns are operational, but the barrels are showing stress fractures. Another full-intensity firefight would likely render them inoperable. So we're combat capable, but barely," Reyes summarized, her expression grim. "And Fleet Command's response." Communications Officer Patel looked up from her datapad. "The nearest battle group is still 72 hours out, Captain. They're pushing their engines to the limit. But..." The unspoken conclusion hung in the air. If the Valkyrie returned in force before reinforcements arrived, the Fortitude would face them alone. "There's something else you should see, Captain," Lieutenant Zhang from Sensor Operations said, stepping forward. "We've been analyzing the sensor data from the engagement." He tapped a command into the holodeck, bringing up a new display showing energy patterns from the Valkyrie vessels. "Their ships operate on a fundamentally different principle than ours," Zhang explained. "While we use separate systems with redundancies and backups, the Valkyrie integrate everything. Their hull, weapons, shields, and even life support appear to be part of a single neural network, which makes them incredibly efficient," Rodriguez added, "but also potentially vulnerable if that network is disrupted." Reyes leaned forward, studying the patterns. The EMP affected them more severely than it should have. Their technology is advanced enough that they should have hardened protections against such basic attacks. "That's just it, Captain," Zhang continued excitedly. "I don't think they've encountered EMPs before, at least not in combat. Their neural network appears to prioritize efficiency over redundancy. When faced with our seemingly primitive attack, they had no prepared response." A slow smile spread across Reyes's face. "They've optimized themselves into a corner. Perfect efficiency, but no plan B." "Exactly," Rodriguez confirmed. "Their ships are technological marvels, faster, more powerful, and more advanced than anything we've built. But they're designed with the assumption that their primary systems won't fail. While human history is basically a long record of things failing at the worst possible moment." Reyes finished. Her mind raced, considering the tactical implications. "What about our long-range sensors? Any sign of the Valkyrie returning?" Jackson's expression turned grave. "Yes, Captain. We detected a large energy signature consistent with Valkyrie FTL drives approximately 6 hours ago. Based on their trajectory and speed, They'll reach this system within 18 hours. And it's not just a scouting party this time. The holodisplay shifted to show the approaching Valkyrie fleet. 12 vessels, including what appeared to be a dreadnought-class ship nearly 5 times the size of the Fortitude. Silence fell over the tactical room as the officers absorbed the gravity of their situation. Even at full capacity, the Fortitude would have been no match for such a force. In its damaged state, conventional tactics would lead to certain destruction. "They're expecting us to either run or fight conventionally," Rice said finally, breaking the silence. "So we'll do neither." She straightened, a plan forming in her mind. "Chief Rodriguez, I need you to make some modifications to our remaining systems." For the next 12 hours, the crew of the Fortitude worked feverishly to implement Captain Rice's unconventional plan. Engineering teams rerouted power systems, weapons specialists recalibrated the remaining missiles, and even the ship's communication array was modified for a purpose its designers had never intended. As the countdown to the Valkyrie fleet's arrival reached 4 hours, Reyes called her senior staff together one final time. "I won't pretend this isn't a desperate gamble," she told them frankly. "If we're wrong about the Valkyrie neural network's vulnerabilities, we won't survive the first exchange of fire. And if we're right," Wei asked, "then we might just save not only ourselves but provide the entire human fleet with a tactical advantage against a technologically superior enemy." Rise looked around at her officers, seeing determination in their eyes despite the exhaustion. "Take your stations, and remember, when the primary systems fail, we fall back to secondaries. When those fail, we go to tertiaries. That's the human way. And today, it might just save us all." As the officers dispersed to their positions, Rodriguez lingered. "Captain, there's one more thing. We've had to jury-rig so many systems that some of our fixes might fail spectacularly. We're basically running on backup systems for our backup systems at this point." Reyes nodded. "Noted, Chief. But I'd rather die trying something unorthodox than die following standard procedures against an enemy who can calculate those procedures faster than we can execute them." 3 hours later, the Fortitude emerged from behind Proxima Centauri V's moon, its engines burning hot as it took up position near one of the system's asteroid fields. The ship's transponder broadcast on all frequencies, essentially announcing its presence to the approaching Valkyrie fleet. "They've detected us," Jackson confirmed from his station on the bridge. "The Valkyrie fleet is adjusting course to intercept. Estimated time to weapons range, 15 minutes." Rice settled into her command chair, outwardly calm despite the tension coiling in her stomach. "Initiate Phase 1. Let's see if our assumptions about their tactical doctrines hold true." The Fortitude began transmitting a complex series of signals, not communication attempts, but rather a carefully calibrated pattern of data bursts designed to mimic damaged human military encryption. To the Valkyrie, it would appear that the human vessel was attempting to send distress calls or tactical data to non-existent allies. "They're deploying into attack formation," Wei reported as the alien ships appeared on the long-range sensors. "Just as you predicted, Captain. They're spreading out to cut off potential escape vectors." Reyes nodded. "They think we're either waiting for reinforcements or planning to run. Phase 2 on my mark." The Valkyrie fleet approached with perfect precision, their formation optimized for maximum weapons coverage while minimizing their own vulnerability. The massive dreadnought remained at the center, protected by the smaller vessels. Now, Reyes ordered as the alien ships entered medium weapons range. The Fortitude's engines flared suddenly, pushing the ship toward the densest part of the asteroid field. Instead of firing its weapons, the human vessel deployed a series of modified communication buoys, each emitting its own electromagnetic signature. "The Valkyrie are adjusting course to pursue," Jackson reported. "They're splitting their forces to maintain the containment pattern." Reyes watched the tactical display with intense focus. "Wait for it." The buoys suddenly activated, each emitting a precisely calibrated electromagnetic pulse that mimicked the signature of an activating FTL drive. To the Valkyrie sensors, It would appear as though multiple human ships were attempting to make emergency jumps from within the asteroid field. "They're taking the bait," Wei confirmed with growing excitement. 4 of their smaller vessels are breaking formation to investigate the false signatures. "Execute Phase 3, Rise commanded. The Fortitude abruptly reversed course, its engine straining as it accelerated directly toward the Valkyrie dreadnought. Simultaneously, the ship's modified weapons systems activated, not firing conventional munitions, but instead launching a barrage of specially configured EMP devices, each one designed to resonate at a different frequency. The Valkyrie, clearly surprised by the sudden aggression from a vessel they had calculated as attempting to escape, responded with overwhelming firepower. Energy beams and exotic projectiles streaked toward the Fortitude. Braced for impact, rays called as the first volley struck their shields. The ship shuddered violently, damage reports flooding in from all sections. "Primary shields failing," White reported tensely, switching to secondaries. As the backup shield generators engaged, the Fortitude continued its suicidal charge toward the Valkyrie dreadnought, now close enough that the massive alien vessel filled the view screen. "Primary reactor overload." Rodriguez's voice came through the comm system. "Shutting down to prevent catastrophic failure." The lights on the bridge dimmed as the ship switched to auxiliary power. To the Valkyrie, it must have appeared that the human vessel was crippled and drifting helplessly, exactly as Reyes had planned. "All EMP devices deployed," White confirmed. "Detonation in 5 seconds." The Valkyrie dreadnought, sensing an easy kill, moved closer to finish off the apparently disabled human ship. "All hands, secure for electromagnetic storm," Reyes ordered calmly. Throughout the Fortitude, specially prepared systems shut down or entered protected states. The EMPs detonated simultaneously, creating a cascading wave of electromagnetic disruption far more powerful than their previous attack. The Valkyrie dreadnought, directly at the epicenter of the storm, experienced the full force of the assault. Its neural network, designed for perfect efficiency rather than resilience against such primitive attacks, faltered catastrophically. "It's working," Jackson exclaimed. "The dreadnought's systems are going haywire." Rice didn't waste a moment of their advantage. "All weapons, fire everything we have left. Target their central command node." The Fortitude, operating on its third-tier backup systems, launched its remaining missiles and fired its rail guns at the vulnerable alien vessel. The Valkyrie dreadnought, its perfect neural network in disarray, could not coordinate its defenses effectively. Multiple explosions blossomed across the massive alien ship as human missiles found their targets. The smaller Valkyrie vessels, partially affected by the EMP storm and confused by the sudden vulnerability of their command ship, broke formation as they attempted to process this unexpected development. "The dreadnought's primary power signature is destabilizing," Wei reported, his voice tight with controlled excitement. "I think we've triggered a cascade failure in their neural network." The bridge crew watched in stunned silence as the massive Valkyrie vessel began to break apart, secondary explosions rippling along its once perfect hull. The remaining alien ships, their coordinated behavior now fractured, began to retreat. "They're running," Jackson confirmed in disbelief. "The entire Valkyrie fleet is withdrawing." A ragged cheer went up from the bridge crew, quickly silenced as Captain Reyes raised her hand. "Damage report," she requested, her voice steady despite the exhaustion evident on her face. "We're operating on emergency power only," Rodriguez reported from engineering. "FTL drive is completely offline. Life support is stable but running on tertiary backups. Primary and secondary weapon systems are non-functional." Reyes nodded, taking in the grim assessment. The Fortitude had won, but at enormous cost. The ship was barely functional, drifting in space with multiple systems offline or operating on their final backup configurations. "Send a complete tactical record to Fleet Command," she ordered. "Make sure they understand exactly how we defeated a technologically superior force." As the communications officer carried out her instructions, Rice stared at the tactical display, showing the retreating Valkyrie ships. They had encountered something their perfect neural networks hadn't been programmed to handle, a vessel that refused to die when its primary systems failed, that kept fighting with backups and improvisations that made no logical sense to their efficiency-optimized calculations. 3 days later, as the Fortitude was being towed back to the nearest human shipyard for extensive repairs, Rice received a communication from Fleet Command. The tactical data from their engagement had been analyzed and distributed throughout the human fleet. New directives were being issued for all vessels: increase redundancy in critical systems, maintain separated control networks, and prepare contingency protocols for fighting with degraded capabilities. In the decades that followed, human ships would continue to appear primitive and inefficient compared to their alien counterparts. Their hulls would contain backup systems that seemed unnecessary, power grids that could be reconfigured on the fly, and weapons that could operate independently from central control if needed to the Valkyrie and other technologically advanced species. These design choices appeared illogical and wasteful, but they were born from a fundamental truth humanity had learned through thousands of years of warfare, from ancient sailing ships to modern spacecraft. No matter how perfect your primary system, it will eventually fail. And when it does, having a backup, even an imperfect one, means the difference between victory and destruction. Captain Maya Rice's unconventional victory against the Valkyrie would be studied in military academies for generations, not as an example of technological superiority, but as a testament to humanity's most enduring strength: the ability to plan for failure, adapt to disaster, and keep fighting long after any logical assessment would predict defeat.